All right, team, welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and add our presenters. So give me 1 second. We got Denise. Are you all good on captions? It looks like you are connected. Just let me know. All right, we're going to go ahead and welcome Megan. Hi, Megan. We are going to welcome Ellen. Hi, Ellen. It's so good to see you. And then finally, we have Emily. Hi, Emily. Glad you could make it. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you all. Welcome.
All right. If everyone can hear me, I will go ahead and kick it off. I think, Ellen, you are going to share your screen. Can we get started with that? Just so we can have a.
Yes, I was just double checking. Greer, are you sharing or do you guys share? Oh, she's still here.
If you want me to share, I will share. Otherwise, you share.
Okay, I'm on it, Emily.
Fantastic. Just to get everybody on the same page. Hi, everyone. We are excited to have a conversation in a shared space for learning from with one another and from one another as we are going to be talking about effective accompliceship. Specifically, how do we use our privilege to take steps that make a difference? With that being said, I'll introduce myself and then the other speakers. I'll ask them to do the same. My name is Emily Nybo. I'm coming to everyone from Charlotte, North Carolina today. I am a blonde, middle-aged woman wearing a white patterned shirt today, and my background is gently blurred, but it is mostly the white alcove of my corner office apartment today. My background that brought me to this panel is I have over 15 years of experience in strategic HR and culture, specifically as a internal DEIB leader and leadership culture consultant for the past few years, but I've worked with several global companies on the inside as a DEI program manager and strategic leader. So with that, I would like to hand it off to, how about Megan next and then Ellen?
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Reese. I use she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you today from what we call Oakland, California, but is also the ancestral home of the Ohlone people. It's a little overcast today, so I'm not sure what kind of light you're seeing me in. I'm in such a small box, I can't tell. But behind me is a blue couch, a chaotic whiteboard, some concert photos, lots of books and plants. And I'm a therapist, a coach, and a workplace consultant. I'm all about psychological safety, or whatever we have to call it nowadays, to get leaders to get on board with it. And my background into allyship and accomplice work comes from some racial justice work. I've always been someone who liked to stand up for people. I've always been someone who's rooted in fairness and social justice. But I made a commitment to show up as an accomplice about 10 or 11 years ago. And, it's a way of life. So I'm here for the long haul for all the people who need accomplices.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellen Whitlock Baker. I am also a coach and I consult as well. I have about 20 years of experience working in engaging alumni and communities and have just branched off to run my own coaching and consulting business over this last year. I'm really lucky to be here because I got to meet Greer, who was on an episode of my podcast and absolutely floored me with her approach to a human-centric workplace. And I've been learning a ton ever since. I am coming at you from Edmonds, Washington, which is just a little bit north of Seattle. I am a middle-aged woman. I have sort of medium-length brownish blonde, let's be clear, it's a little gray hair. And I am wearing some maroon lipstick that I hope is working for my complexion and some big AirPod Max orange and red headphones. Behind me, there are shelves with a whole bunch of books and photos and the light is pretty gray over here in the Edmonds, Washington area. So really nice to meet all of you.
I forgot to do my physical description. I don't know why I would be avoiding that, but anyway, middle-aged white woman. I have wavy dishwater blonde hair. I say dishwater because I'm a big Prince fan, and glasses. I think that's, yeah, you get it.
All right.
Ellen, I'm not sure if you saw the request. Okay.
Another mic. You can keep going, Emily, if you want.
All right. While Ellen is moving closer to her microphone, wanted to let you know that it's not just the three of us today that have put in some of the work to bring this panel to you. Wanted to first and foremost give grace and thanks to Brittany King, who has been a key collaborator and advisor for today's session. You'll be hearing from her in a video in just a moment. Also, all of the other names on the screen, in addition to AC. Someone tell me AC's last name. My brain just wiped the nervousness of being on a panel, but there were many people that brought this to you today. I say that because we know as white women in this space, also history tells us that white women sometimes are the catalyst to making culture change happen, but also we tend to get in the way. So, as we are approaching this work of how do we be allies in the world of rethinking ability, but also in all areas of life, because we all likely can be or need an ally at some point. We wanted to create this space to have rooms where we can talk about the hard stuff, where we can unpack our privilege and give ourselves grace to hopefully move through any of our own personal blockers so we can take active action and meaningful action as accomplices. So without further ado, let's jump in and hear from Brittany King herself, who is the founder and one of the best consultants, I think, in the allyship space, but there's so many voices. But once we're able to click the video, let's hear from Brittany. We can't hear it, so let's.
Yeah, I thought you might not be able to. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ellen. Let's check settings.
I actually don't know exactly.
Hey, Ellen, when you go to share,
yes, please.
On the right side under presenter layout, it says share options, and you're going to want to click that share sound button. And if you can't show it, I can probably show my screen real quick.
Why don't you do that, Greer? Because I'm
hold on
really struggling here. Sorry, guys.
Tech issues in real time. Okay, I'm going to share my screen back.
We spent lots of time figuring out the sound. So, Ellen, it is not your user error. It is just confusing, but Greer will get us back.
Yes. All right. I am coming up. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Brittany King. I am your neighborhood hope dealer. That means I deal hope with my words. I am the founder and CEO of Amplify Allyship. We teach companies how to use allyship as their competitive advantage. Yes, even right now. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my background, but first, I want to provide you with a visual description of what I look like. I'm a Black woman with caramel brown skin. I am wearing my black hair half up in a ponytail with the other half being down and rested on each side of my shoulder. I have on dark brown tortoise-colored glasses that are square-ish in shape, and I'm wearing gold hoop earrings that are just a bit smaller than a quarter. I have on a navy blue top that is appearing Black on the screen, but it is complementary to my Zoom background that includes my tan, white, and navy blue logo, and my face is against a whitish gray background. Now, I've told you who I am and what I do, but I also want to share that I am a recovering corporate leader who spent nearly 15 years in corporate America, influencing and leading HR, talent acquisition, and DEI, or some variants of each of those three things. I did that for a decade and a half until 2 years ago. I volunteered to be impacted by layoffs because of the cumulative toll of being Black at work. I want to bookend the conversation with that reality because what you will see next are 4 non-Black women and perhaps another individual who is not Black. And so as you look at the juxtaposition of me, a Black woman who left corporate America, and these non-Black people having a conversation around accomplishment, accompliceship, I want you to consider the reality that the best work that can be done is when allies turn into accomplices for good. One of my favorite sayings related to inclusion, culture, people, and belonging is nothing about us without us. I am honored as a Black woman to have been able to serve as an advisor for these panelists. But let's be very clear, we can all need or be an ally or accomplice at any time. As you are listening to the insights that these superhuman leaders will share, remember that they too are in need of allies. I want you to grant both yourself and them permission to be imperfect, because we are all at the end of the day navigating this human experience. This is a great opportunity for you to stay engaged, to learn, unlearn, yield to validate the experiences of others, and audit your existing level of allyship. And I just ran through out of order my framework that we use here at Amplify Allyship with our clients. So I will leave you with this. A stands for audit. You want to be an accomplice in good? Audit how often you are in rooms intentionally and by your own choosing where you are the only. It's a really good way to measure your accompliceship. I joined a APAC Leaders ERG for quite some time and was the only non-Asian appearing person in the room, and every time I had anxiety and angst. Every time. And that is okay, because I am committed to allyship and accompliceship. The second thing is learn. Just be open to learning. And then I'm going to tie that with unlearn. That's the second L, big letter L. The reality is none of us have this figured out, which is why we are having conversations in conferences like this. And then finally, I want you to yield. Yield to validate the experiences of others. Your job as an accomplice is not to convince, cajole, bring someone over from, quote, the other side. Your job is to yield. One of my favorite activities I do with my clients is called WTS, and it is What the Shrek. It's a quick clip on allyship and accompliceship that I am equipping each of you to walk through. As you watch this clip on your own time, pay attention to the accompliceship dynamics that are taking place. I firmly believe that at the end of the day, we rise together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your temerity in joining this conversation and for your commitment to creating a better world, or as we say here at Amplify Allyship, to creating workplaces that work. Until next time, friends, I am Brittany King signing off. Take care.
Thank you so much, Brittany. We are so lucky to have had Brittany as our mentor and supporter for this session, and to have her share that wonderful introduction. We're going to spend just a second on showing that framework. So if you want to show the next slide, Greer, we actually have Brittany's framework and we'll make sure that folks get a copy of it. But this is the ally framework that Brittany was speaking of that her Amplify Allyship group uses. And it's such a wonderful and easy one to remember. So it's one we wanted to share with all of you just to make sure you have it too. Starting with the audits, what is my current level of allyship? Lean in and recognize what you've learned, what you have to learn. Let yourself go on an unlearning journey, which is one of my favorite words, unlearning, and yield to validate the experiences of others. And we also have the clip, which we'll put in the comments in a little bit, of the Shrek moment that Brittany uses in the What the Shrek exercise. So you can take a look at it on your own time. We'll find it and put it in there. So we wanted to share that. And then, Emily, did you want to see if there's any questions or feedback, or Megan, did you want to share anything now before we start the first exercise?
I guess I wanted to check in and see if we wanted to sort of give a definition for accompliceship, if that's a thing that people feel like would be useful. So I can take if that's a thing people think is useful, I can take a little crack at that. For me, I choose to have the goal of accomplish it, because what that means to me is, instead of simply like being a bystander in systems that are not equitable and not good for everybody, I want to be an accomplice in building a world in which everybody gets access to the resources they need: dignity, safety, respect, etc. Right? It's a way to acknowledge that the systems we live in now do not prioritize everybody, and a wish to build a world in which we do have that. Is that helpful? And did I make it worse?
Yeah, I think you did a great job, Megan. And I think this idea of being an accomplice is really, not only do we observe the systems in which we live, I think in a moment we're gonna probably spend like 90 seconds where we want everyone to reflect on the framework on the screen before we jump into it. But when we're asking people to be not only allies but step into accompliceship, where do you stand in terms of your power and privilege in the systems in which we navigate? And how do you use your circle of influence? How do you use your power and privilege? Because regardless of who we are or what our titles are, we all have innate power and privilege. So with that, an accomplice, Dr. Akila Kade wrote in the chat that a wonderful definition, and I wanted to call it out. She shares that an accomplice is someone who checks their bias, power, and privilege with the same energy of brushing their teeth and putting on their deodorant. So as we all walk through life daily, how do we make sure we don't center ourselves, but we also look out and change the systems in a way that is more equitable and accessible for all? So I'm gonna hush. Megan, do you have anything that you want to add?
I mean, I think that's great. And yeah, I think that's a great place to jump off from.
Fantastic. So I'm low tech. I'm going to set a 90-second timer on my phone. Would like everyone to let's take 90 seconds and reflect and journal on the prompts on the screen. Take yourself through the Ally framework and an audit.
Go to the next slide.
Next slide too, Greer. You can reflect on the whole framework, or you can stick to this one question, which is how often are you the only in rooms intentionally and by your own choosing, which is the first thing that Brittany asked us. And this we find to be a really helpful jumping off point for understanding how you land in the continuum of accompliceship.
Ten seconds until we come back. There was a little timer at top. We went a little over 90 seconds, but all right, everyone, come on back.
So we wanted to open it up before we're going to get into some breakout groups in a little bit so we can have really intentional conversations. But we wanted to open it up for anyone wanting to share a reflection that they had during this time, something that surprised you, did you find that you're in more rooms than you expected or thought that you were, or you're in fewer than you thought you were? How does it make you feel? Anyone want to share?
I don't see anything in chat just yet, but one of the follow-up questions that I always think about is what level of effort does it take for you to be one of the onlys in a room? Is it something you have to actively choose to do? Because so often our societies, our social groups, we just tend to find people that are like us. That affinity bias is wired in. We've got a hand. Would you like to come off mic?
Yeah. Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Dr. Keela Cadet here. I am an expert in accompliceship, so I'm really enjoying the conversation you are all having. I am also what I call a lonelier only. So I'm one of the few or the only in the room. And I always will be because I'm a Black woman with rare disease, disability, who's also educated. So if we just take something simple, me having a doctorate, I'm part of 3% of the population that have a doctorate. When you break it down to Black women, we're looking at 0.0% of Black women, we're 0.4 or 5. And so I always have to know when I walk into a room or space or place that people are not going to understand me. And I'm going to have to decide if I want to use my power and privilege to advocate for others. And so for those of you who are thinking about this question and what it feels like, I would push back and say, we can't intentionally do anything. Things happen actionably. So people are purposely saying, you know what, we need Black people in the room. So let's invite Dr. Akila today so that way we're not racist, sexist, homophobic, ableist, or whatever the list they think may be for my intersectionality to be in that space. We as oppressed people cannot choose who we are in the room. So we already know that we're not being set up for success. What we can choose is if we're going to advocate for ourselves first and others who may come after us in that space.
Thank you for that. And one thing that I'm also going to share too is if you are a member of majority culture, there, as you advocate for yourself, I think it's also important to think about where does self-disclosure play into power and privilege? I'll just say that, right? Because there are a number of privileges that we carry. Since this is a safe space, I'll use some examples just in case anyone hasn't really thought. We've spoken about unapparent disabilities, but also things like religion, neurodiversity, right? So for myself, I'm a neurodivergent queer woman who is heterosexual passing. So in certain instances, it makes sense for me to disclose. In a lot of places, I don't necessarily disclose as a diversity practitioner. And it's not a matter of compromising your authenticity. It's a matter of just being aware of how do you show up in the space and how does using your presence, your voice, your power and privilege possibly take space out of the room for others, especially when we're talking about the yield, the last step of the ally model. So I'll just bring that as an offering because we've got a lot to unpack in spaces. So with that, is this a good time for the next slide, Ellen, Megan, if we feel good
That's
about
great.
it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, y'all. So we're going to let's spend 15 minutes just kind of in a choose your own adventure mode. I'm going to open breakout rooms very quickly. And if you feel kind of like you're new to allyship and want to ask awkward questions, and while this space was centered for white women to ask questions that may feel stupid, if you are a male or a person of color, we welcome you in any of these spaces, but we also don't expect you to step in and do labor. So if you want to go into a breakout room, that is your option. All right. So everyone can choose their own adventure. If you're new to this, Ellen will be leading a discussion for kind of unpacking accomplishment. What does it mean to go beyond just being an ally? If you're group 2, you see the description on the screen. Megan is going to hold space for some that have stepped into this before, but may struggle with their own privilege. Or as Brittany shared in the video, feel nervous. How do you move through that? Right? And if you say the wrong thing, what does repair look like? And for me, I'm going to hold what I'm calling a space for people who may be more, maybe you've been in social justice, maybe you've been in DEI work for a bit, but this is still a process. I say dumb stuff and I cause harm, but I still have to move through it because the circles that I'm in as an HR leader and as a DEIB leader, I have a higher standard in which I have to do. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. And we invite you to come to this space and we'll give a 3-minute warning before we come back to the main room. So thanks everyone. And room 3 didn't save, sorry, but we're gonna go. We're gonna open the room. So we've got room 1 is new but motivated. 2 is what we're calling active but learning. And room 3 is going to be for those that may have been doing this work for a little while. So please choose your own adventure. And if we don't have active participation in some of the rooms, we may move you in and go down to 2 rooms. And if that's the case, I will jump in with another. So please assign yourself. I will be joining room 3 in just a moment. We're going to wait. Thank you, everyone. All right. Greer or anyone else, I'm going to go ahead and jump into room 3 and jump into conversation. If that is a-okay. Hey, friends. While all of our groups are getting so rudely yanked back to this main room, we're going to give them just a couple seconds while everyone is coming back. I'm sure that these conversations can always go on much longer, but alas, we only have so much time. And the hope is always that this is, if it's your first, your second, or your 30th, it is certainly not your last conversation. So, I would love, I think everybody's back. Is everybody fully back? Welcome back. All right, yes. Welcome back, everyone, to the main room. These conversations could always continue, and we hope that they do continue. Would love to hear with a representative from room 1 first. What were some of the bulleted takeaways from your conversation?
If anyone from room 1 wants to speak up, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm happy to do it. I forgot to assign somebody, but we had a good conversation about a further definition of accompliceship, which I stumbled through. And it, means something a little different for everyone, but we really focused on what is the action that you are taking, as opposed to the hey, I agree with whatever this is, but not doing anything. And especially as white women, how can and should we use our power in order to do that? I mentioned a really wonderful resource. Her name is Jodi Ann Bury. She just wrote a book called Authentic. And we also have Dr. Akila here, who has another great book. So I'm going to put Jodi Ann's stuff in the chat. I told my room I would be doing that, but she has been really helpful for me. She has a TED Talk as well about that really has sort of a call to action for white women in particular. And we talked about how perfectionism can keep us from taking action because we are afraid we're not going to get it perfect, and that we often go into sort of a fight, flight, freeze scenario when we feel uncomfortable, which a lot of this work is all about feeling uncomfortable because we're unlearning some stuff that we have been learning forever. And so we didn't quite get here, but one of the things that I really like to think about is these sort of small micro changes can really help you to get to a place of not having that reaction, that fight, flight, or freeze. You don't necessarily go from being someone who doesn't really know what accompliceship is and isn't feeling comfortable in that space to an activist in one day. You really have to take it slow, and you're going to learn and unlearn all along the way, and it will be uncomfortable. So we talked a lot about that sort of not letting that perfectionism, that wish for people to like us, that sort of white woman world, white supremacist culture, to not get in our way, because we will get in our own way if we kind of let that lead us. So I think that was about it. Does anyone else want to share anything from group 1? Thank you.
All right, Megan in group 2, what were some of the takeaways from your conversation?
Well, I was to open it up to participants, and I'm here for support.
I can give a couple of takeaways that at least from what I had written down. I think we talked about a lot of different kind of topics. We ended up being a group of folks, mainly in HR. There were some folks in education there in the beginning as well, but something we talked about is just as part of our day-to-day and how we're trying to understand more about different groups and different cultures. One thing that really stuck with me was just the importance of diversifying the stories that we hear, and making sure that either our reading, our media, our conversations are just with different voices. And I think that's really how I tend to internalize a lot of understanding. While completely understanding, we will never understand the lived experiences. So never assuming that we understand that what folks are going through, even if we have some similar overlapping characteristics there. One other piece we talked about is that while it might feel a bit guilty to us, to kind of prioritize self-care in our journey as well. We talked a little bit about how oftentimes as HR folks, we are advocating for or trying to be allies and accomplices for a lot of folks throughout the organization and do not always win those battles. We are often the ones who need to deliver messages that we do not agree with. And I think that is a struggle of ours internally, where we have kind of invisible allyship that is unsuccessful allyship, and just the importance of us kind of taking care of ourselves in that situation so we do not give up, so that we can continue along this marathon and along this journey.
Fantastic. For the sake of time, I'm going to briefly summarize group 3. I'm going to invite additional comments, and then we're going to close. And I will be pulling together a list of resources and also sharing the What the Shrek link, so we can all take our work forward. So in group 3, we were a series of HR leaders and folks that have been in the DEIB space for a while. And Dr. Akila Kadei joined our group, so I have to give her credit for a lot of these nuggets. We talked about if we're going to do this work, you got to be uncomfortable. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. To add on what group 2 was saying, if you are doing the work, you are in the place of navigating systems. There's going to be an element of which you have to take care of yourself, but you also have to very strategically play, where are you going to push within the way that you have power and privilege? How are you going to show up in a way that is useful? Also, listen, not only to the lived experiences of others, but Black women have been telling us that this was going to happen for a while. This isn't new. However, if folks didn't listen the last 5 years, hopefully they can listen now. But in order for us to show up effectively, I want to go back really quick, if we can go back to the ally model, because I wanted to bring this session to a close with us thinking about, what does it mean for us to audit how we're showing up as accomplices with action in mind? What are the current actions? What are your current level of actions? Learning, continuing to diversify the media that you take in, continue to really meaningfully listen and learn from the experiences of others, especially during the challenging political changes that are happening right now. Look at who is affected and learn what that impact is. Unlearn your biases, unlearn some of the things that you may have learned in your learning journey. And I'm going to say white saviorship. If you are a white person, make sure that you unlearn what that need to fix looks like, to make sure that you are not possibly continuing more harm if your lenses were shaped through the systems of white supremacy, which leads us to yield. Yield first. Ask yourself, what is useful? How can I show up in a way that doesn't take up space, that doesn't unvalidate the experience of others? There are some tools that we'll share. One that I'm going to drop. If you are an audiobook person, it's about a 6-hour listen. Bell Hooks, her book, Feminism is for Everyone. She talks about the history of advocacy and the role that white women have played in movements, but also the problematic whitewashing or watering down of progress in the name of progress that women have done to move things forward. Yes, I'm aware as a practitioner that sometimes 2 steps forward is still progress, but we have to make sure that we are lifting all as we climb, as we are trying to make a world that is more accessible, fair, equal for all. So before I drop all the links, I'm going to invite anyone else for any thoughts, questions, comments, because we are right at time and I want to make sure we have time to get all those resources out. Megan, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just want to, this is echoing what a lot of people have already said, but, I've been really thinking about self-care recently because we are definitely in a marathon and, being an accomplice is a way of life. And we're just going to keep sharpening our critical thinking at every step of the way. And just to remind you that in those moments of discomfort, in those moments where we maybe feel shame for getting it wrong, I highly encourage you to have places you can process that that are not holding the person impacted hostage to your feelings. So like, as you're committing to this work, look at where you can get your support, look at where you can learn from people who have a similar identity to you, but are maybe further down the road. Look at places where you can ask those folks for help and question and support. And also do take care of those feelings, because we want you to stay in the game. We want you to stay in this work and keep chipping away at this world we live in and building something that includes us all.
Ellen, anything else that you want to add? Okay, she's shaking her head and she's still on mute, so I'm going to assume that's a no. Give me some grace, y'all, while I copy and paste a whole bunch of links. The What the Shrek, unless someone beats me to the What the Shrek link that's here. Wanted to give thanks again to Brittany King for lending us her framework. Wanted to give thanks for all of you for being able and willing to step in to awkward conversations, possibly because awkward is just the starting point. We have to be intentionally getting comfortable with discomfort. And as it came up in the chat, we're not entitled to comfort just because we are white. But I'm going to say we're not necessarily entitled to comfort if we want to be doing this work that makes it more comfortable makes it better for everybody else. We're all going to have to sacrifice a little bit of comfort if we want to say that we're doing this work. Because we don't get to call ourselves allies, but that's a whole other different conversation. Thanks, everyone. I'll hand it back over to Greer.